if you've read anything on time management or effectiveness or personal success, you've probably heard the story of Ivy Lee, who supposedly came to Charles Schwab and said, I can make you more effective, help you get a lot more accomplished. And he said, what'll it cost me? And Ivy said, test it out for 30 days or 6 months or whatever, depending on the story. And whatever you think it's worth, you send me a check. And supposedly Charles Schwab sent him a check for $25,000 or $35,000, depending on which story on the internet you look. But basically he said, make a list, top 6 things, and go down the list, and only do what, only focus on number 1 until you're done with it, then do number 2, and then do number 3. And it's a great idea in theory. Like if I could just focus on what number 1 was and number 2 was and number 3 was, that would be phenomenal. But my life doesn't quite work like that. My job is half leading people and half leading the youth group here, and then also in charge of some other missionaries and stuff. So, sometimes people have problems that don't work on my schedule. Another thing you probably heard before is Stephen Covey's idea of, I believe it's Covey, of big rocks first, of focusing on putting the things in your life, scheduling those things that are priorities, and then the little things kind of can fit in the cracks around, the big things. And both of those things I love, both of those ideas of focusing on what's important, kind of two different ways of saying the same thing. And I think you really need to know in your life what is really important. What are those things that you should be focusing on? And hopefully in your life you have those priorities. One of my prayer of late for myself and for others has been to be able to discern what is best. And I think we need to know that. We need to know what should be the bulk of our life. What should we be focusing on? But here's the deal. In my life, I know at the beginning of my weeks what these big rocks are. My family and study and working on some long-term projects and focusing on some relationships and kids. But here's what happens. I would say in the average week, if I'm being honest, probably the amount of time that I want to get and focus on some of my priorities seems like a whole lot of other little things come in, and then a couple of my priorities, if this box is my life, are out here, and I go, well, it wasn't urgent, it wasn't crucial. I'll focus on that next week. Well, here's what I'm learning, and here's what I'm figuring out is I kind of know my priorities. I know these areas of life that I want to focus on the most, these things that are of top importance to me. But what happens is they keep getting pushed out. So here's what I'm learning. I need to not just schedule those things in or make time to get away or whatever, but I need to figure out what are the top things that keep me from this week in and week out. What are those things that keep me from these priorities, from the big rocks? And here's what I'm discovering. I need to be away from my office, away from the phone, away from email, so that I can study, so that I can pray, so that I can get the important projects done. And then I'm able to do those things, and then I'm able to fit the little things in. And if I miss somebody coming by the office, they leave a note. If a phone call's there, it's on voicemail. But here's the deal. It's the same in my house. Yesterday, I had spent a couple hours with my daughter, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to spend an hour in work while she plays with stuff, and she's climbing all over me. And so we live in a small Japanese house. I went yesterday to see if I could put plexiglass on my balcony and install an AC unit out there and make that an office. Plexiglass alone here in Japan was going to be $500, so I'm still looking for an office at home or an RV that I can park in my garage if you have. So what I'm learning is I need to not only figure out what my priorities are so that I can focus on those, but I need to figure out what are the biggest hindrances to accomplishing what I feel like God wants me to accomplish from week to week. And so one of those is just figuring out an undistractable location. So I think that's an official word, undistractable. But just a location where I can go to where I'm not going to be distracted and I can focus on those other things. One of the other things I've realized is sometimes I'll get to an event or I'll get to something and I end up doing extra work because I didn't fully plan through all the steps, and I end up doing something right before an event that I could have had my administrative assistant do during the week. And so for me, the second one was just to plan a little bit better. I've realized an extra 5 minutes of planning can sometimes save me an hour or two of work when it gets to the event. So I'm getting a little bit better at planning and making that a weekly habit. And for each one of us, we're going to have different things. But if you want to continue to become a better leader, I think one of the most important things you can do is figure out what is keeping you from achieving what you feel like God really has for you to do, and get rid of those constraints in your life.